Here is a truth that will make you question everything you think you know about the universe. I, Commander Zix Grimtalon of the Galactic Wildlife Conservation Authority, once believed humans were the most impractical species ever to stumble into space. Soft, weak, chronically optimistic creatures who treated every dangerous situation like a potential friendship opportunity. I was wrong about many things that day. But mostly, I was wrong about Dr. Chloe Winters. The crisis began on Nexus Station, where our most secure xenobiology facility housed creatures so dangerous that even thinking about them required hazard pay. The Ravenclaw triplets had arrived 3 days earlier, 3 infant apex predators whose species was infamous for turning entire star systems into hunting grounds. Commander, senior researcher Kex Ironhide reported with his usual dramatic flair, the cubs are refusing all sustenance. They have rejected 17 different dietary protocols and attacked every staff member who has approached their containment area. 17 protocols, in 3 days. These cubs were not just picky eaters, they were apparently conducting a hunger strike with homicidal tendencies. What about sedation? I asked, though I already knew the answer would be problematic. Ravenclaw physiology is resistant to most known tranquilizers. The few substances that might work carry a 73% mortality rate for juveniles. 73%. So our options were either letting 3 baby apex predators starve to death, or accidentally killing them while trying to help. Both choices would result in paperwork that could end my career and possibly my existence. Sir, Communications Officer Hex Steelwhisper interrupted. We have received a response to our emergency consultation request. From whom? The Terran Xenobiological Institute. They are sending a specialist, a human specialist, for creatures that had been eating Galactic Authority personnel for breakfast, literally, since their species was first catalogued. What qualifications does this specialist possess? I asked, though I suspected the answer would be depressingly inadequate. Dr. Chloe Winters, Comparative Animal Psychology, with emphasis on trauma recovery in dangerous species. Trauma recovery. Because apparently, homicidal infant predators needed therapy rather than stronger cages. The human arrived 6 hours later, looking exactly like what I expected from her species. Small, fragile, and completely unsuited for dealing with creatures that could dismantle a battle cruiser with their milk teeth. She stood barely shoulder-high to most of my staff, with blonde hair pulled into what humans call a ponytail, and wearing civilian clothes that would provide absolutely no protection against claws, fangs, or acidic saliva. Commander Grimtalon, she said with that peculiar human gesture of extending her hand for physical contact. Pleasure to meet you. I understand you have 3 cubs, experiencing adjustment difficulties. Adjustment difficulties. She called the systematic terrorization of a military research facility adjustment difficulties. Dr. Winters, I replied, carefully shaking her hand and marveling at how something so small could produce such confident grip strength. The cubs have been unmanageable since arrival. They have injured 4 staff members, destroyed 2 containment units, and appear to be conducting psychological warfare against our security teams. Psychological warfare? They coordinate their attacks, vary their behavioral patterns to prevent adaptation, and seem to take pleasure in causing maximum disruption with minimum energy expenditure. Dr. Winters nodded thoughtfully, as if I had just described normal childhood development, rather than advanced tactical thinking in apex predators. May I observe them? I led her to containment level 7, where the cubs were housed in our most secure facility. The corridor leading to their area was littered with the remains of various failed feeding attempts, maintenance equipment that had been shredded for recreational purposes, and warning signs in 14 different languages. Impressive, Doctor. Winters observed, studying the destruction with what looked suspiciously like admiration. They have been very busy. Busy, right. Like 3 natural disasters having a coordination meeting. We reached the observation area, where the cubs were engaged in what our behavioral analysts had termed recreational facility demolition. They had somehow managed to disassemble their sleeping platforms and were using the components to construct what looked like siege equipment. Fascinating, Doctor, Winters murmured, watching the cubs work with engineering precision that would impress a construction crew. How old are they? Approximately 6 weeks, senior researcher Ironhide replied, though their cognitive development appears accelerated beyond normal parameters. Accelerated development often occurs in response to stress, Dr. Winters explained. They are adapting to perceived threats by advancing their problem-solving abilities. Perceived threats. Because apparently, being housed in the galaxy's most secure research facility constituted a threatening environment. The Cubs noticed our arrival immediately. All three stopped their construction project and turned to assess this new group of potential victims. Their silver eyes tracked our movements with predatory calculation that made my combat instincts scream warnings. Then, something extraordinary happened. The Cubs looked directly at Dr. Winters, and their entire demeanor changed. The aggressive posturing disappeared, replaced by what could only be described as curious interest. They approached the observation barrier, not with threatening stalks, but with the cautious excitement of children investigating something new. Remarkable, I breathed. They are not displaying any hostile behaviors. Why would they? Dr. Winters asked, seeming genuinely puzzled by my surprise. I am not threatening them. Not threatening them. Because standing 4 meters away from 3 apex predators separated only by reinforced transparent aluminum was apparently a non-threatening situation in human psychology. Dr. Winters, I said carefully, those Cubs have attacked every person who has approached this area. Have they made actual contact with anyone? The question caught me off guard. Well, no. But the barriers have prevented. So they have been displaying defensive behaviors without following through on genuine attacks. I paused, considering this distinction. In all the incident reports, the Cubs had indeed made aggressive displays, but they had never actually attempted to breach their containment or harm anyone who remained at a safe distance. You think they are afraid? Senior researcher Ironhide asked. I think they are babies who have been separated from everything familiar, transported across space, and surrounded by beings who approach them with weapons, armor, and obvious fear. Dr. Winters moved closer to the observation panel, and the Cubs immediately pressed against their side of the barrier. Of course they are going to be defensive. The largest Cub, designated Alpha by our research team, made a soft vocalization that sounded almost like a question. Dr. Winters responded with a gentle humming sound that seemed to capture the Cub's attention completely. You are communicating with it, I observed with something approaching awe. With him, Dr. Winters corrected. Alpha is male, Storm is female, and Frost is male. And yes, Ravenclaws have complex vocal communication systems. Most species do, when anyone bothers to listen. She had identified their genders and learned their individual characteristics in less than 5 minutes of observation. Our research team had been referring to them as specimens for 3 days. Dr. Winters, I said, making a decision that would either solve our crisis or create a much larger one. Would you be willing to attempt direct interaction with the Cubs? Of course. That is why I am here. Of course. Because walking into a den with 3 apex predators was obviously the logical next step. Standard safety protocols require full protective gear, armed escort, and emergency extraction procedures, senior researcher Ironhide began. Standard safety protocols assume hostile intent, Dr. Winters interrupted gently. These Cubs are not hostile. They are scared, confused, and probably hungry. They have refused all food offerings. They have refused food from people they do not trust. There is a significant difference. An hour later, I found myself authorizing the most insane safety waiver in the history of the Galactic Wildlife Conservation Authority. Dr. Winters would enter the Cubs' containment area wearing normal civilian clothes, carrying nothing except a small bag of what she called conversation starters, and protected only by her apparently unshakable confidence in her ability to communicate with dangerous predators. If this goes wrong, I warned as she prepared for entry, the inquiry board will use my career as a cautionary tale for the next century. It will not go wrong, Doctor. Winters replied with that maddening human certainty. Trust me. Trust her. Trust a small human woman to walk into a cage with 3 creatures that had been designed by evolution specifically to kill things like her. Dr. Winters entered the containment area through the secure airlock, moving slowly and keeping her hands visible. The cubs watched her approach with intense attention, but showed none of the aggressive behaviors they had displayed toward every other visitor. "Hello, you 3, she said softly, settling cross-legged on the floor in the center of their space. "I know this has been really hard for you. New place, strange smells, lots of scary people in armor." The cubs exchanged glances, as if confirming that this person was indeed different from their previous visitors. Alpha took a tentative step closer, then another. "That's right, Doctor." Winters continued, reaching into her bag to withdraw something that made senior researcher Ironhide gasp audibly. "Are those toys?" he asked through the intercom. "Enrichment items, Doctor," Winters corrected, placing 3 small, colorful objects on the floor around her. "Young predators need mental stimulation and play opportunities for proper development." The cub's reaction was immediate and profound. Instead of investigating the toys as potential threats or prey items, they approached with the unmistakable excitement of children discovering presents. Storm, the female, reached the first toy and began examining it with delicate precision, turning it over in her claws and making soft chirping sounds of apparent delight. Frost followed, selecting a different item and promptly beginning to play with it in a manner that suggested these supposedly mindless killing machines possessed complex cognitive abilities. Alpha, meanwhile, had approached Dr. Winters directly. The massive cub, who would grow to be over 3 meters long as an adult, settled down beside her and rested his enormous head on her lap with complete trust. "Incredible," I whispered, watching through the observation window as 3 apex predators played like ordinary children while their new favorite person scratched behind Alpha's ears. "They are magnificent, Doctor," Winters said, her voice filled with genuine affection. "Look at those problem-solving skills. Storm has already figured out that her toy has moving parts, and Frost is testing the durability of his." Frost was indeed conducting what appeared to be a systematic engineering analysis of his toy, applying precise pressure to different points and observing the results with scientific interest. "Dr. Winters," senior researcher Ironhide called through the intercom, "how did you know they would respond positively to play items?" "Because they are children," she replied simply. "Intelligent, curious children who have been treated like monsters instead of individuals with needs and feelings." For the next hour, I watched Dr. Winters conduct what could only be described as a play therapy session with 3 creatures that had been terrorizing a military research facility. She introduced games, taught them simple rules, and generally treated them like beloved pets rather than dangerous specimens. The transformation was remarkable. The cubs' stress behaviors disappeared completely, replaced by enthusiasm, cooperation, and what looked suspiciously like affection for their new human friend. "They are bonding with her," I observed to senior researcher Ironhide. "More than bonding," he replied, studying his monitoring data with amazement. "Their neurochemical profiles indicate they are forming attachment behaviors typically seen only between Ravenclaw cubs and their biological mothers." Attachment behaviors. In less than 2 hours, Dr. Winters had become the surrogate mother to 3 apex predators. "Dr. Winters," I called through the intercom, "are you ready to conclude the session?" "Actually," she replied, looking up from where Alpha was showing her his impressive collection of dismantled facility components, "I think these 3 would benefit from extended socialization time. Would it be possible for me to remain with them overnight?" "Overnight." She wanted to sleep in a cage with 3 apex predators. "Absolutely not," I said immediately. "The safety risks are unacceptable." "Commander," Dr. Winters said gently, "look at them. Do they seem dangerous to you right now?" I looked. Storm was curled up against Dr. Winters' side, purring like an oversized house cat. Frost had fallen asleep with his head on her feet. Alpha was methodically grooming her hair with the same careful attention that Ravenclaws typically reserved for their own cubs. "They have adopted you," senior researcher Ironhide said in wonder. "In their social structure, you are now family." Family. Three creatures bred for violence had decided that one small human woman was worth protecting with their lives. The question, Doctor, Winters said as Alpha continued his grooming project, is whether we are going to honor that bond or break it for the sake of bureaucratic protocols. As I watched the most feared predators in the galaxy treat a human civilian like their beloved mother, I realized that everything I thought I knew about interspecies relations was about to change. And it was all because one small woman had looked at three terrified babies and seen children instead of monsters. Fine, I said, making another decision that would either earn me a commendation or a court-martial. Dr. Winters stays with the Cubs tonight, but we maintain full monitoring and emergency protocols. What followed was the most surreal night shift in the history of Nexus Station. Instead of watching dangerous predators plot their next escape attempt, we observed what could only be described as a human bedtime routine, with three apex predators as eager participants. Dr. Winters had somehow procured additional blankets and arranged them into a makeshift sleeping area. The Cubs helped by dragging over various pieces of furniture they had previously demolished, apparently repurposing their destructive creativity into nest-building activities. She is reading to them, senior researcher Ironhide reported with barely contained amazement. Indeed, Doctor. Winters had produced a small electronic reader and was sharing what appeared to be human children's stories. The Cubs listened with rapt attention, occasionally making soft sounds when she showed them pictures. The neurological scans are extraordinary, Doctor. Ironhide continued. Their brain activity patterns indicate complex cognitive processing. They are not just listening to sounds. They are following narrative structure. Narrative structure. Three baby apex predators were developing literary appreciation. Commander, Night Shift Supervisor Tex Ironjaw reported around midnight. The Cubs are demonstrating protective behaviors toward Dr. Winters. I looked at the live feed to see all three Cubs arranged in a defensive perimeter around their sleeping human. Storm had positioned herself near the entrance, Frost covered the ventilation access, and Alpha maintained overwatch from an elevated position. Their formation was textbook security protocol. They are guarding her, I observed unnecessarily. More than that, Doctor. Ironhide said, studying his readouts. They are taking shifts. Every 2 hours, they rotate positions while maintaining constant vigilance. Military-grade protective instincts. From babies who had been characterized as mindless killing machines. The real test came at 0400 hours when Maintenance Chief Beck Steelgear needed emergency access to repair an environmental malfunction. The Cubs' reaction was swift and decisive. All three immediately moved to intercept the approaching maintenance worker, not with aggressive intent, but with clear communication that unauthorized access to their human would not be permitted. They are not attacking him, I noted with relief. No, Dr. Winters called softly from inside the enclosure, having been awakened by the Cubs' alert behaviors. They are asking him to identify himself properly. Asking? Watch Storm's posture. She is blocking access but leaving retreat options open. That is inquiry behavior, not aggression. Dr. Winters approached the entrance and apparently explained the situation to her protectors. The Cubs stepped aside, but maintained careful observation of the maintenance chief throughout his work. Remarkable cooperation, Doctor, Ironhide murmured. They are following her guidance while maintaining their protective instincts. The morning brought Director General Rex Battlehorn, the authority's most senior administrator, along with a delegation of officials who looked like they were investigating either a breakthrough or a catastrophe. Commander Grimtalon, Director Battlehorn announced in his gravelly voice, I have received some very unusual reports about overnight developments. Yes, sir. The situation has evolved. Evolved? He gestured toward the containment area where Dr. Winters was conducting what appeared to be morning exercises with three cooperative apex predators. My briefing indicated you authorized overnight cohabitation between a civilian human and dangerous xenofauna. The results speak for themselves, sir. The director observed the scene through the reinforced viewing panel. Dr. Winters was teaching the Cubs what looked like coordinated movement patterns, and they were following her instructions with enthusiastic precision. "They are learning choreography," one of the delegation members observed incredulously. "Physical coordination exercises, Doctor," Winters corrected through the intercom. "Young predators need structured activity to develop proper motor control and social cooperation." "Social cooperation," Director Battlehorn repeated slowly. "In Ravenclaws." "They are naturally social creatures, Doctor," Winters explained. "The aggressive behaviors you observed were stress responses to isolation and improper care protocols." As if to demonstrate, Alpha approached the observation panel and made a series of complex vocalizations directed specifically at Director Battlehorn. "He is greeting you, Doctor," Winters translated. "Ravenclaws have formal social protocols for meeting pack leaders." Pack leaders. A baby apex predator was attempting diplomatic contact with the head of the Galactic Wildlife Conservation Authority. "Can you respond appropriately?" Director Battlehorn asked hesitantly. "The proper acknowledgement is a low harmonic tone followed by a respectful nod, Doctor," Winters instructed. Director Battlehorn, clearly feeling ridiculous, produced what sounded like a mechanical rumble, and nodded formally toward Alpha. The cub's response was immediate and positive, a series of pleased chirps that seemed to indicate successful communication. "Extraordinary," the director breathed. "It actually understood diplomatic protocol." "He," Dr. Winters corrected gently. "Alpha is an individual with complex social intelligence, not an IT." Over the following days, Dr. Winters worked with facility staff to completely restructure the cub's care protocols. Instead of containment and control, the new approach emphasized education, socialization, and what she called developmental enrichment. The results were revolutionary. The cubs rapidly learned to distinguish between friendly staff and potential threats, responding appropriately to each situation. They mastered complex commands, demonstrated problem-solving abilities that impressed engineering teams, and began showing individual personalities that made it impossible to think of them as interchangeable specimens. Storm proved to be the intellectual, spending hours with puzzle toys and showing particular aptitude for mechanical devices. Frost was the artist, creating intricate arrangements with available materials and displaying aesthetic preferences that suggested genuine artistic sensibility. Alpha remained the diplomat, serving as intermediary between his siblings and human staff, while maintaining his protective devotion to Dr. Winters. "They have distinct cognitive profiles, Dr. Winters explained during one of our daily briefings. Storm processes information analytically, Frost thinks creatively, and Alpha specializes in emotional intelligence and social coordination. These capabilities were not documented in previous studies of the species," Director Battlehorn noted. "Previous studies observed adults in combat situations or juveniles in laboratory isolation," Dr. Winters replied. "No one had ever studied Ravenclaws in proper social environments with appropriate developmental support. The breakthrough that changed everything came during the cubs' 6th week of care, when Dr. Winters introduced them to other species under controlled conditions. The first test subject was Maintenance Chief Steelgear, who had volunteered despite his obvious nervousness about interacting with creatures that could theoretically dismantle him for spare parts. "Remember, Doctor," Winters coached him. "Approach slowly, keep your hands visible, and let them investigate you first." The cub's reaction was cautious but polite. They assessed the maintenance chief thoroughly, apparently decided he was acceptable, and proceeded to treat him like a slightly interesting piece of furniture. "They are ignoring me," Steelgear reported with obvious relief. "They are accepting you as a non-threatening presence, Doctor," Winters corrected. "That is actually high praise from apex predators." By the end of the week, the cubs were successfully socializing with over a dozen facility personnel. Each interaction was carefully managed, but the pattern was consistent. Proper introduction protocols led to peaceful coexistence. "The implications are staggering," senior researcher Ironhide observed. "If juvenile Ravenclaws can be socialized to coexist peacefully with other species, it completely changes our understanding of predator psychology. And our approach to interstellar relations," Director Battlehorn added. How many conflicts could have been avoided if we had understood that apex predators might be capable of diplomacy? The cubs were growing rapidly, already approaching the size where their playful interactions could become inadvertently dangerous. But instead of becoming more aggressive, they were developing remarkable self-control under Dr. Winter's guidance. They are learning to moderate their strength, she explained, as we watched Alpha carefully handling a delicate instrument during a training exercise. Proper socialization teaches them that different situations require different responses. The most remarkable development occurred during their 8th week, when the cubs spontaneously demonstrated protective behavior toward other facility staff members. A minor accident in the adjacent laboratory had resulted in an injured researcher calling for help. The cubs immediately responded to the distress signals, moving to investigate and showing clear concern for the welfare of someone they barely knew. They are extending their protective instincts beyond their immediate pack, Dr. Winters observed with obvious pride. This level of empathy is unprecedented in predator species. They consider all facility personnel to be part of their extended family unit, Dr. Ironhide realized. We are not just coexisting with them, we have been adopted. The question of long-term placement became increasingly urgent as the cubs approached adolescence. They would soon be too large and powerful for standard facility housing, but they were also too socialized to be released into wild populations. What they need, Dr. Winters suggested, is a permanent home where they can continue developing while contributing to society. Contributing to society. Director Battlehorn looked intrigued. Their intelligence levels, problem-solving abilities, and social skills make them potentially valuable in numerous fields. Research, diplomacy, engineering support, even security services. Security services. The idea of apex predators working as galactic peacekeepers would have been absurd 6 months ago. Now it seemed almost logical. The New Frontier Colony has been requesting specialized personnel for their Interspecies Cooperation Initiative, Director Battlehorn noted. They might be interested in hosting the first Ravenclaw integration program. Integration program. Trust Dr. Winters to make cohabitation with apex predators sound like a social services initiative. The cubs would need continued guidance and support, she said. Someone familiar with their development patterns and behavioral needs. Are you volunteering for permanent assignment? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Dr. Winters looked at Alpha, who was currently helping Storm solve a complex mechanical puzzle, while Frost provided artistic consultation on the proper arrangement of components. Someone has to make sure they get the future they deserve, she said simply. 6 months later, I received a transmission from New Frontier Colony showing Dr. Winters and the cubs in their new roles as interspecies relations specialists. The cubs, now magnificent young adults, were working alongside colonists from a dozen different species in perfect harmony. Alpha had become the colony's chief diplomatic coordinator. Storm served as chief engineering consultant, and Frost had established the settlement's first interspecies cultural center. They are not just surviving, Dr. Winters reported, with Alpha's massive head resting affectionately on her shoulder. They are thriving, and they are teaching us as much as we taught them. The video panned to show Storm collaborating with alien engineers on a complex construction project, while Frost led a mixed-species art workshop. In the background, other colonies were implementing similar programs based on what had become known as the Winters Protocols. But the most significant development came 9 months after their relocation, when Dr. Winters sent an urgent transmission that would reshape interstellar policy forever. Commander, her excited voice crackled through the communication system, we have made a discovery that changes everything we thought we knew about Ravenclaw society. The video feed showed her standing in what appeared to be a natural clearing, surrounded by towering alien trees. Beside her stood Alpha, Storm, and Frost, now fully grown and magnificent in their adult forms. But they were not alone. Meet the Thornwood Pack, Dr. Winters announced as the camera panned to reveal 6 adult Ravenclaws emerging from the forest with cautious dignity. Alpha's birth family. My secondary heart stopped functioning. Adult Ravenclaws in close proximity to human settlements was a scenario that existed only in our worst-case emergency protocols. Dr. Winters, I managed through the intercom. Are you in immediate danger? Her laugh was bright and genuinely amused. Commander, I would like you to meet Sage, the pack matriarch, Alpha's mother, the largest of the adult Ravenclaws, a magnificent female with silver-streaked fur, approached Dr. Winters with movements that radiated power and grace. Instead of the expected predatory aggression, she lowered her massive head in what was unmistakably a gesture of respect. She is thanking me for caring for her son, Dr. Winters explained, gently touching the enormous predator's head. Apparently, Ravenclaw packs have been searching for their lost cubs for months. How is communication possible? I asked, my voice several octaves higher than usual. Alpha has been teaching his family our interaction protocols while learning their traditional social structures. We have established a basic diplomatic framework, with wild apex predators. The implications are extraordinary, Dr. Winters continued as Storm began what appeared to be animated conversation with two of the adult pack members. Ravenclaw society is not solitary and territorial as we believed. They have complex pack hierarchies, cultural traditions, and even primitive legal systems. Legal systems? Director Battlehorn's voice joined the transmission. They have concepts of justice, property rights, and conflict resolution. The aggressive behaviors we associated with their species were actually responses to perceived violations of their social codes. The camera showed Frost leading several adult Ravenclaws in what looked suspiciously like an art appreciation session. Their massive forms gathered around his latest sculpture with obvious interest and approval. This is unprecedented, Director Battlehorn observed. If Ravenclaws possess complex social structures, they may qualify for sapient species classification. They do possess such structures, Dr. Winters confirmed, and they have formally requested diplomatic recognition through Alpha as their chosen ambassador. A Ravenclaw cub we had once considered a dangerous specimen was now serving as his species' first official diplomat. The pack has also made a formal proposal, Dr. Winters added. They want to establish a permanent embassy at New Frontier Colony, with their children receiving education alongside other species young. The transmission showed young Ravenclaw cubs playing peacefully with human children, their natural grace and intelligence making them popular playmates rather than feared predators. Interspecies integration at the family level, I breathed. This could revolutionize galactic society. It already is, Dr. Winters replied. 3 other colony worlds have requested Ravenclaw diplomatic missions. They are particularly interested in Ravenclaw expertise in ecosystem management and natural resource conservation. The irony was not lost on me. The species we had feared as destructive predators were becoming environmental consultants for sustainable development. The Galactic Council has scheduled emergency sessions to address Ravenclaw citizenship applications, Director Battlehorn announced. This may be the most significant diplomatic development in recorded history. 6 months later, I stood in the council chambers watching Alpha deliver the first formal address by a Ravenclaw representative to the assembled galactic community. His speech, translated through the communication protocols Dr. Winters had helped develop, outlined his species' desire for peaceful coexistence and mutual cooperation. My pack wishes to contribute our knowledge and abilities to the greater galactic community, Alpha concluded. We offer our partnership in building a future where strength protects rather than destroys. The standing ovation lasted for 7 minutes. The New Frontier Integration Project has become a model for interspecies cooperation throughout the sector, Director Battlehorn noted in his final report. What began as a crisis management situation has evolved into a revolutionary approach to galactic diplomacy. As I filed the last documentation for what history would remember as the Ravenclaw Revolution, I reflected on how one small human had transformed our understanding of an entire species by treating 3 frightened babies like the intelligent individuals they were. The cubs had never left her side after that first day, because they had recognized something the rest of us missed. Dr. Chloe Winters did not just see their potential. She saw their hearts. And in return, they had shown her, and all of us, that the most dangerous predators in the galaxy could choose to be protectors instead. Sometimes it turned out the most revolutionary act was simply treating someone with love.